Hello there, I'm Ryan Starr. I teach GMAT, GRE, and EA for Manhattan Prep, and I've been teaching GMAT and GRE all around town for about 20 years. And in that time, one of the things I've seen that correlates best to a student's success in preparing for these exams is a well-filled out and well-used error log. So what I want to talk to you about is, how do you fill out an error log well? How do you use it well? All right, here goes. Now, first thing with an error log is filling it out, all right? And to fill it out well, you have to think about a few things. One, what's the nature of the error? Two, what's your real takeaway from that error? And three, have you generalized that takeaway enough so that it's going to be useful in other problems than the problem from which you got the takeaway? All right, let's talk about the types of errors. So very broadly speaking, there are three types of errors: content errors, timing or approach errors, and careless errors. Content errors are the ones you make the most in the beginning when you're still learning stuff, right? You didn't know a rule, you didn't know a property. You usually redress those errors by going and reading a chapter, doing flashcards, watching online lessons, that sort of thing. On GMAT Club's error log, content errors show up as conceptual gap and vocabulary void. Timing or approach mistakes show up on GMAT Club's error log as timing error. And what these are basically problems you got right, but you could have done better. Like if you've done a problem, let's say algebraically, and it's taken you 3.5 minutes, but you got it right, that's pretty good. But spending 3.5 minutes on that problem means some problem down the line, you're not going to have time for it and you're going to get it wrong. So even though the error ends up showing up in another problem, the error was really committed in the problem you took 3.5 minutes on, assuming it could be done faster otherwise, right? Maybe had you done it numerically, maybe working backwards from the answers or with smart numbers, you could have gotten that problem done in 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. And if that's the case, you want to, in your error log, put down how you could have known to use the numerical approach and in what similar circumstances you would use such an approach. Careless mistakes are some of the hardest ones to eradicate, and these tend to be the ones that plague students even toward the end of their studying. It can feel like they're all very one-off, all very unique occurrences, right? But the more you keep track of them in an error log, the more you might notice certain patterns, right? In GMAT Club's error log, the categories for these are calculation mistake and just careless error. And basically what you want to do with careless mistakes is, let's say it's a calculation error. You want to think about, when did you make that calculation error? What were you doing? What kind of problem was it? What kind of operation was it? So for instance, if I make a calculation error, it's going to be with negatives. I'm going to mess up the sign somewhere, right? I know that because of repeated errors in the past. And so I train myself to, when I see problems with negatives, slow down around the negatives because I don't need to be missing that problem on a little technicality. I spend 5 or 10 seconds extra because I know when to be careful. And that's a big part of what you need to do with your error log for careless errors. If you misread something in the problem, answered the wrong question, a lot of these errors are by design rather than your own careless errors. And while a lot of students come away from such problems saying, oh, I got to read more carefully, or I got to slow down a little or something like that, those aren't really takeaways you can put practically into practice. They're really hard to put into practice, actually, because there's no guarantee that reading more slowly is even going to help you, right? So what you've got to do instead is think, okay, what can I do to help me avoid errors like that? Or if I'm going to read more carefully, how exactly am I going to do so? So sometimes the answer is more writing in your scratchwork. Write down what the question's asking for. Write out your calculations rather than doing in your head, that sort of thing. Sometimes the answer really is reading more carefully. For me, though, that tends to mean rereading the problem, rereading the question stem, rereading parts of the problem to make sure I got it right before finalizing an answer, right? Your takeaway should be something you can actually do, because now we get to the second part. What do you do with your error log? The point of having an error log is not to have an error log. It's not to read it every night before bed and remind yourself of all the good times when you messed up problems. The point of having an error log is to act as a springboard for follow-up practice. Once a week at least, you need to go through your error log. Look over your errors from the last week or two. See if there are any patterns there or any errors where you're like, yeah, I know I made that mistake before. This isn't the first time I've seen that. And you've got to dedicate at least a day a week to follow up on those errors. Find some similar problems on which you can use those takeaways that you wrote down, because just writing them down isn't going to make them stick in your head well enough to use on test day. You have to have some lived experience using those takeaways, all right? One really great resource for finding follow-up problems, GMAT Club. Go to the forums, do a filtered search by topic. You'll still have to do some fishing around for problems that'll really have the exact features that'll let you use your takeaways, but you'll at least be able to find them, use those takeaways deliberately a few times, and they'll turn more and more into your natural habits when you see such problems. And that's what you're really going for. Fluency is achieved through logging your errors, deliberately practicing your takeaways from those errors, then getting to the test and letting it roll. Good luck out there, everybody. Hope for the best.